I mean, it's curious, the Prince Andrew thing. I mean, I was quite surprised at Christmas when they dragged him out, or he dragged himself out, for this kind of cameo role in the Royal Family Does Church thing, which they do around Christmas time, because prior to that, of course, we hadn't seen him for a while. Surely there's no way back for this man.
I don't think there is any way back for him. I would say that this new bundle of documents doesn't contain that much new information. Yep. There was lots of speculation about what was going to be in there, and I think most people are accepting it's a bit of a damp squib. There is a new allegation or a new anecdote about him with a spitting image doll of himself with Virginia Giuffre and one of the other American complainants. But the complaint to the Metropolitan Police is wholly performative. There is no chance that anything in these documents is going to reopen this investigation, because primarily a lot of the conduct occurred in the United States. The Met wouldn't even have any jurisdiction over that.
Of course.
And there would need to be some offence here with strong evidence, and these reports don't add anything.
This was a sort of showboating exercise, because it was a Republican organisation that
it was an anti-monarchy group that made it for the headlines.
Which is kind of, I guess, what you do if you're an anti-monarchy group, but it doesn't hold any legal water in that respect, which is why the Met have said there's really nothing that we're going to investigate.
No, and there isn't likely to be. I mean, that's one of the big tragedies of this case, is that there's very unlikely to be any kind of criminal justice or investigation into these crimes. I mean, there has in the United States, obviously. Ghislaine Maxwell's now serving a 20-year prison sentence. Epstein killed himself before he could face justice. But what is now playing out is the kind of machinations of the civil law over there, which means more and more information starts to drip out. I mean, this is not the revelation of a grand paedophile network on Jeffrey Epstein's island that a lot of people were hoping for. It's worth noting very little mention of Donald Trump, very little mention of wrongdoing by any of the prominent people that we thought there would be new information about. So it's right to put these documents in context.
But of course, if you're in any doubt, just go to Twitter, because they've got the whole thing solved over there on Twitter. I mean, the list of names and what they're supposed to have done and all manner of other terrible shenanigans. Somebody made the point last night, which it made me think is probably the case, that although obviously any allegations like this are incredibly serious, but actually the size of this, this criminal harem is apparently been overstated by the media. This was a guy that had a proclivity for younger girls and sometimes underage girls. And most of the offences that were committed by him. He was also simultaneously a philanthropist, a very, very rich man. He held big, wild parties where people drank and ate nice food and then went home again. They weren't orgies, they were just get-togethers, and anyone who was anyone wanted to be on the wanted to be on the guest list. Now, that doesn't in any way defend him, but it does bring a slightly different light onto what was going on, because most of the paedophile island, the Lolita Express, all this stuff, these are things that have been invented really mostly by the media, or mostly by social media. Yeah,
and I think, look, there is some clear evidence of, for example, trafficking, of sexual offences against underage girls, some of which has been proven in court, tested, etc. But you're right that it has taken on a life of its own. Things like the Lolita Express, the paedophile island, all of these are creations of social media. And actually that gets very dangerous when allegations are levelled against people with no evidence. Because often what happens with social media is that the presumption of innocence, one of the key tenets of our justice system, both here and in the United States, gets forgotten. And you mentioned the Twitter storm around these documents that unfolded. There were people named explicitly on Twitter that had nothing to do with those documents, and their names were circulated, they were repeated, and some people may face legal recourse, because obviously that is...
And in a way, I hope they do, Luke, because I kept seeing... there was yesterday morning when these first arrived, sort of UK time, and I was looking at some of the names that were on this list, and then about an hour later, it was the same list, but with extra names sort of been added. These were screenshots and this happened a couple of years ago, if you remember, when it first was talked about that there's a list somewhere, a black book of terrible endeavours and horrendous sexual offences, etc. And anyone could just add a name to it and say,